Is it you, me, or adult ADD? Stopping the roller coaster when someone you love has attention deficit disorder. By Gina Pera. Narrated by Pam Ward. Copyright 2008 by Gina Pera. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Gina Pera and was produced in the year 2011 by Tantor Media, Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. Forward. Only within the last 15 years has adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, been recognized as a valid clinical disorder. Yet at least 40 years ago, and possibly a century, the scientific and clinical literature acknowledged its existence. Today, we know ADHD to be more impairing than most other conditions seen in outpatient psychiatric and psychological clinics, including anxiety disorders, dysthymia, and major depression. In short, the scientific evidence is overwhelming for this adult version of a disorder long associated with childhood. In particular, current research details how ADHD can adversely affect all major life activities, including marriage or cohabiting relationships, and the skills intimately involved in maintaining a household and raising a family, including driving an automobile, working a job, managing money, taking care of one's health, and parenting. Until now, however, no books existed that combined both a scientific understanding of adult ADHD with pragmatic recommendations to guide these adults and their partners in coping, problem-solving, and otherwise addressing the difficulties they face in sharing a life and a home. Gina Pera's book does so, with an admirable balance of current scientific information mixed with sage advice and wise, practical strategies based on the current science. There is no better book now that addresses such relationship difficulties and with such sensitivity to the complex issues inherent in them. Thank you, Gina, for writing such a useful book. Russell A. Barkley, Ph.D., Research Professor, Department of Psychiatry at SUNY Upstate Medical University, Syracuse, New York, co-author of ADHD in Adults, What the Science Says, and author of Taking Charge of Adult ADHD. Introduction. I wish I'd had this book 10 years ago, when the world was metaphorically knocking me upside the head, teaching me to pay attention to that human organ called the brain. Teaching me to view the brain, in fact, as an organ, vital to our every physical and emotional function, yet oh so vulnerable. At the time, my 84-year-old mother was slipping tragically into an Alzheimer's-like stroke, dementia, recognizing me as her great friend, but not her seventh and youngest child. It broke my heart. But if her memory had remained intact, it would have broken her heart to see her oldest child and my brother, then age 60, succumbing to brain cancer. Amidst these family dramas, I met my future husband. Over dinner one evening, this newly minted scientist, fresh from completing his doctoral degree at a neurological institute, sprang this unsettling idea on me. Everything we think, do, or feel happens due to chemical reactions in the brain. I shuddered, alarmed at the thought of reducing the seat of the self, the seat of the soul, to a chemistry lab experiment. And he didn't stop there. Given all the vulnerabilities of the brain from conception until death, from genetics, viruses, toxins, and even seemingly minor bumps to the head, it's a wonder that any of us have a working brain, he said. I surely didn't like the sound of it, but there was no arguing with the evidence. Their brain diseases meant that my own mother's and brother's force-of-nature personalities would peak out only for brief glimpses in the slow march toward their physical death. My then-boyfriend's birthday gift to me that first year together was Molecules of Emotion, written by pharmacologist Candace Pert. She is the scientist whose team discovered endorphins, brain molecules that affect how pain and pleasure are experienced. That book set me on a remarkable path of discovery. Little did I know, though, how much more personal this path would become. For this brilliant, handsome, and sometimes even sweet man, the one with whom I could laugh and talk for hours on such a broad range of interesting subjects, would slowly start driving me to distraction. Literally. Perilously. How could someone educated and smart enough to decode the human genome habitually miss the freeway exit and tailgate at top speed? Less physically endangering, but still unnerving, how could he mishear and misremember so often and so significantly? You'll just have to trust me that our miscommunications lay far beyond any Venus, Mars, or human scientist thing. It was more like Earth space-time continuum. Lacking information, namely that he might have adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, my resourceful mind spun plausible theories. Maybe my Southern accent proved sometimes indecipherable to his Yankee ears. Maybe his recent transplant status in Southern California left him freeway challenged. Or maybe he was simply a scientist, distracted by loftier thoughts as he sped past the exit, forgot an important commitment, or missed a critical cue to show that he cared about me. Make no mistake, his brain worked brilliantly much of the time, but when it didn't, when some inexplicable glitch snagged the system, the glaring disparity defied credulity. The fact that he typically failed even to perceive any such glitch, confidently insisting that I had misspoken or forgotten, gave me even more reason to doubt my perceptions. I had an inkling about why my mother's strokes and my brother's brain cancer tumor had affected their behavior the way they did. But what could account for the funny feeling that my physically healthy boyfriend's puzzling actions weren't right either? Not his personality, not his intentionality, but something else entirely. The question nagged at me. Could his stressful workload be a partial explanation? Possibly. Then, too, it was the .com era. Everyone in California was revved up and overcaffeinated, plugging in and tuning out, getting ever more disconnected in their fevered scramble for connectivity. After a few years of futile searches through couples therapy and holistic health routes, dietary changes, exercise, meditation classes, yoga, and caffeine cessation crusades, all of which helped, but not nearly enough, I chanced upon an eye-catching new title at the public library, Neuropsychiatrist Daniel Amen's Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. Amen's vivid descriptions of adult ADHD stunned me. When my husband read it, he agreed that ADHD explained a lot about his life. But how could we, a molecular biologist with a sophisticated knowledge of neurochemistry and a well-read journalist who knew a little bit about everything, not have already known about adult ADHD? Especially that many adults have the stealth version, meaning no physical hyperactivity. Easy. Because adult ADHD came on the official radar screen only in the mid-1990s, and not one of the physicians or therapists from whom we'd sought help had read the memo by the time I found Amen's book in 2000. Newly armed with ADHD awareness, I carefully scrutinized my towering stack of relationship self-help books. So many authors, including psychologists, describe in lurid detail the damaging effect that certain behaviors have on a relationship. Yet they never introduce the strong possibility that these might be highly treatable ADHD-related traits. Worse, most of these books offer scant advice other than coping, detaching, or leaving. Some books even blame readers' dysfunction for making such bad choices in a mate, and others insist that these troubling mates act willfully and are consciously abusive. Continuing to read voraciously on the subject, I stumbled upon a new online support group for the partners of adults with ADHD. Assiduously comparing notes, we members learned that we weren't alone, that others' experiences closely mirrored our own in ways never covered in the ADHD books. One thing we learned: if we passively left the solutions to the physicians and therapists who failed to acknowledge or understand ADHD, or to our in-denial ADHD partners, we'd keep looping around the roller coaster until we dropped from nervous exhaustion. Shortly after assuming leadership of a different online support group, I also began organizing local lectures and support groups for partners, adults, and parents of children with ADHD. To me, the news about adult ADHD was that inspiring, that revolutionary. What a rare privilege to see lives expand and long-dormant possibilities unfold before me. All that these people had needed were solid facts, validation, and support. How appalling, then, to hear so many horror stories about how our mental health system had failed them, some for decades. It was almost as bad as the barrage of bizarre propaganda attacking ADHD medications, and even the diagnosis itself. Neuroscience has bestowed upon us new knowledge to elevate our lives. To my mind, we cannot afford to stay in an 18th century mindset, promulgated by a blasé healthcare system or anti-psychiatry conspiracy theorists' twaddle worming its way through the internet like a virus. After 8 years spent researching, observing, writing, lecturing, and volunteering in this field, I have heard from more than 1,000 partners of adults with ADHD. Hundreds have maintained long-term contact with me, offering in intimate detail their life trajectories, after their ADHD partner developed awareness and new strategies, after the surprise pregnancy, after retirement or a cross-country move, after the roller coaster settled into an enjoyable ride, and sometimes after the divorce. Common themes cropped up, including this one. When couples learn about ADHD and work together to address problematic symptoms, life can improve dramatically. Even when relationships do not continue, healing takes place and lessons are learned about digging deep into the human capacity for strength, love, compassion, and stretching the mind around new ideas. As powerful as the support groups are, we still needed a comprehensive guide that could help new members get up to speed quickly. That's because once they finally hit upon the possible explanation of ADHD, they are often clinging to the end of frayed ropes. And it's tough to piece together a clear path from email posts and several books about ADHD, none of which address the partner's particular concerns or offer step-by-step strategies. With my print journalism background, I seemed the likeliest candidate to gather and synthesize the group's collective wisdom and the best advice from the field's top research and clinical experts. The way I see it, ADHD awareness is a social justice issue, a question of each person deserving accurate knowledge and access to care that affords us full access to our talents and abilities, much like the revolutionary concept of eyeglasses did in centuries past. The people I've met while volunteering have been generally wealthy enough to afford a computer and educated enough to find a group, and still they suffered and struggled. What about those with fewer resources? Through this book, I hope to reach many more thousands, not with more stigma, misjudgments, or criticism, but with compassion, answers, and hope. I sincerely wish that you find this guide helpful, even life-changing, and that it might inspire you to share your knowledge with others. Now, to get started, I believe the book will be most helpful if you keep the following points in mind. Reading Roadmap. The book is divided into 3 sections. Part 1 explains ADHD and the various ways it can manifest, particularly when the diagnosis comes later in life. Part 2 examines the side effects of living with a partner's unrecognized ADHD, particularly when symptoms are moderate to severe. Part 3 focuses on the strategies recommended by leading experts to help you both take charge of ADHD and your life as a couple. Terminology used in this book. ADHD. The official term is Attention Deficit/Hyperactivity Disorder, AD/HD. In most cases, for readability, this text omits the slash. The book title also eliminates the H, because many people mistakenly think that ADHD refers only to the subtype that includes hyperactivity. In fact, that's the least common subtype in adults. ADHD partner. The person in the couple who has ADHD. It's best to avoid defining a person by a diagnosis, but this can make text unwieldy. So please accept here the compromise of ADHD partner. Support group member. The partner of an adult with ADHD who has joined a discussion group to give and receive support and information. Some support group members have ADHD along with their partners, and that is why the term non-ADHD partner does not fit. Please note, when you come across a quote from a man referring to his boyfriend or a woman to her girlfriend, it's not a typo. Some support group members are in same-sex relationships. Expect to find many voices in this support group in a book. You'll find many quotes, introduced by first name only. These come courtesy of 160-plus support group members who kindly provided permission to share with you their email posts to the group, with names and identifying details changed. We all hope that this multitude of voices, typically without preamble or in-depth background, simulates the healing power of actual group exchanges for those with no access to such a group. Consider this a resource foundation, not a quick listen. This guide is designed to help you and your ADHD partner at every point along the journey. Take it at your own pace, skip around, and keep it handy for future reference. Please don't think you have to follow all the strategies at once. And if you're feeling particularly stressed and isolated, consider starting with Part 2 before trying to understand more about ADHD. A word about tips. You'll find plenty in Part 3, as well as at this book's companion website, ADHDrollercoaster.com. But until you gain a strong foundation of ADHD awareness, the support group consensus is don't waste your time and energy with tips. This is not a global portrait of ADHD. ADHD is a syndrome, meaning that its symptoms are highly variable and range from mild to severe. Consequently, it is inappropriate to make blanket statements, positive, negative, or otherwise, about the estimated 10 to 30 million adults who have ADHD in the United States alone. At the same time, this book presumes that you came here to cut through the briar patch that is enveloping the good things in your relationship, so that you can make it better, and not simply to hear other people's praise for their wonderful partners who happen to have ADHD. In part, finding clarity hinges on naming and recognizing the invisible enemy that is causing problems for you both. That's why this book details common challenges that ADHD creates, and then explains how to start resolving them. If this book doesn't seem to gush with words of love, try reading between the lines. You'll see that many ADHD partners have inspired great loyalty and affection, which strongly manifests in support group members' perseverance in learning about this condition and encouraging their ADHD partners to learn too. The reality is that many adults with ADHD are simply not connecting the dots in their lives, and it requires deep love to coax effective treatment from our mental health care system for a partner who is convinced that nothing can improve, or, worse, that nothing is wrong, when it obviously is. Please keep an open mind about medications for ADHD. Full disclosure. I have practiced yoga for 25 years, know the farmers who grow the organic food consumed at my house, was raised by a mother with old-world wisdom in self-care, and avoid medication until all alternatives have been exhausted. I have also read scores of books and scientific papers about ADHD, and attended 5 international conferences to learn from this field's leading authorities. Most important, I have listened with empathy but also critical thought to hundreds of adults with ADHD, their partners, and parents of children with ADHD when they have shared their dramatic before and after medication scenarios. The net result? This book is pro-medication and makes no apologies for it. If the message seems stronger than necessary, consider it a clear, unequivocal statement to counter dangerously pervasive myth. Gingerly, and with some justified trepidation, our society is discussing this topic less emotionally and more factually. More physicians are learning to properly treat ADHD, meaning that more people gain benefits without experiencing unnecessary side effects. Soon, I hope, people with ADHD who choose to take medication will feel as little embarrassment about it as most people feel about wearing eyeglasses, itself an historical source of stigma. Maybe you and your own ADHD partner will get along just fine with ADHD education and awareness and without medication. That's a common story, too. But please consider that if this skeptic can be convinced that ADHD medications might actually be life-enhancing and health-promoting, maybe it's worth keeping an open mind, especially for others who might be grappling with more severe symptoms and would appreciate your acceptance and compassion. Welcome to listeners who have ADHD. When ADHD goes unrecognized for years, it takes a toll on everyone. Many good books more fully examine the emotional issues common to late-to-diagnosis adults, but only this book also addresses the impact of unrecognized ADHD on the partners of. With minor adjustment, these issues often also resonate for the children, siblings, and parents of late-to-diagnosis adults. Still, my efforts to outline effective adult ADHD diagnosis and treatment, which I've found in no other single source, are as much for you as for your partners, parents, siblings, and other loved ones. I hope you find it helpful. For more information, you'll find more stories, tips, resources, and links at this book's companion website, ADHDrollercoaster.com. I welcome your thoughts and reactions via email, Gina at ADHDrollercoaster.com. And please visit my blogs, youmeadd.org and ADHDrollercoaster.org. About the ADHD Partner Survey. After several years as a member and then a moderator of support groups for the partners of adults with ADHD, I'd heard plenty about the hotspots: issues with money, household chores, clutter, sex, co-parenting, and video game addictions. Perhaps, though, the more vocal group members weren't truly representative of the majority in certain problematic areas. Might there even be topics that few knew to connect with ADHD? Perhaps a mate's restless leg syndrome or reckless driving habits. What about subjects that members might be too timid to broach, including verbal or physical abuse? And for those whose partners had tried medication for ADHD, what factors seemed to contribute to its success or failure? Because the partner of an adult with ADHD is often the more reliable historian of the relationship, and often of the ADHD partner's familial, educational, and vocational background, creating a survey to answer those questions seemed a worthwhile pursuit. To date, this is the largest, most comprehensive survey on this subject. Although not scientific, its methods were rigorous, and its findings mirror those of existing ADHD studies, including those that focus on partnership. Moreover, most scientific studies involve people with ADHD who either are already diagnosed or are pursuing treatment, so-called clinic-referred patients. The ADHD Partner Survey covers that population, but it also offers a rarer, more intimate glimpse into lives wherein ADHD has gone unrecognized and untreated for decades, and firmly remains that way. We cannot know for sure that those partners who remain unevaluated actually have ADHD, but the chances seem strong, given the respondents' selections from a list of ADHD diagnostic traits. In fact, of the 118 respondents whose partners had sought an evaluation, 92% were indeed diagnosed with ADHD. This indicates that support group members might be rather astute at linking ADHD symptoms with their partner's behaviors. Several more might have been diagnosed if the person had not abruptly walked out of the appointment, or if the professional had better expertise in evaluating for ADHD. The survey data presented in this book is limited to a select group, the 111 respondents whose partners have been officially diagnosed with ADHD. Moreover, these respondents knew their ADHD partners before medication treatment, 79% of the 111, or their ADHD partners have never taken medication, 21%. Why select this subgroup? Because this book addresses the challenges created by untreated ADHD and explains treatment strategies. This group could therefore provide a clearer picture of life before and after treatment. Unless a survey question specifically asked about the effect of medication on behavior, respondents based their answers on their ADHD partner's behavior before medication. We do not know how data from support group members, the majority of survey respondents, compares to a control group. That is, people who are not in a support group, not having trouble in their relationship, or not involved with an adult who has ADHD. That might happen in the future, but it will be tricky to identify couples in troubled relationships that aren't, in fact, affected by ADHD. It is too widely missed and misunderstood, even by nationally recognized relationship experts. For now, the data is simply meant to help readers piece together the puzzle of recognizing how ADHD might be affecting their lives. Survey method. In October and November of 2004, 148 respondents completed the password-protected 175-question online survey. Another 14 completed the survey in spring 2005, for a total of 162 respondents. Each had many opportunities to include textual responses that clarified or expanded on their selections. Anonymity was assured. The sheer number of respondents is remarkable, as is the completion rate. Only a handful dropped out, typically because of technical problems with their computers or internet access. Clearly, these respondents were highly motivated to help educate others. Participants. Participants were limited to individuals whose stories I had followed long enough in the support group to be confident of their legitimacy. The 111 respondents whose answers are reported in this book show the following demographics. 86% had male partners, and 14% had female partners. Most reported being in heterosexual relationships, with 6% being in same-sex relationships. Ages ranged from 22 to 75, with a majority from 36 to 53. Most respondents lived in the United States, but 14% resided in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or Israel. 50% were college graduates, and 28% held postgraduate degrees. By contrast, only 26% of their ADHD partners were college grads, but 29% held postgraduate degrees. Of the 71% who disclosed annual household income, 50% reported earning $91,000 and above, and 20% reported earning $50,000 or below. For more information, visit ADHDpartner.org. Part 1. From the tunnel of love to the roller coaster. Could your partner have ADHD? The surprising signs, symptoms, and poor coping strategies that might be creating the dizzying, exhausting, or just really annoying ups and downs in your relationship. I was on the verge of filing for divorce when I read about ADHD. I was amazed that a medical condition might explain my husband's video game fixation, his moods, his...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?